Hello, everyone, and welcome to our One Controller Podcast. Episode 370. You notice anything different? That music, that beautiful tune. I think I might just stop doing music at the beginning of the show. I think it's such an old thing that has been around for so long, and I assume I just picked it up from old IGN podcasts or something like that, where they just play music at the start of their show for no apparent reason. It used to be the Mario Paint music, I think, is what it used to be. But no, I think it might have always been the opening was a different song, and then the ending was Mario Paint music, and then I bought royalty-free music from DL Site for the ending music later on. So, yeah. So if that's a crime against your ears, let me know. Otherwise, I think it's been a little weird lately because I feel like a lot of the shows I haven't been as game-focused or a specific game-focused, and so it's a little hard to know what songs to pick out, but when I throw a review in here, there, it would kind of come up. But anyways, if it's a problem, let me know. Or if you even just like it, don't say not if it's the problem. If you liked it, let me know, because it doesn't have to necessarily be a problem. I'm sure you're not gonna, swear me off because I didn't put the opening music in. So. Anyways, yeah, a lot has gone on since last time. So we had 2 Hot Pot Gamings in a row. I'll talk a little bit about that, I think, later in here. I didn't actually put a section in there for that. I probably should. Maybe after Evo, we'll talk about it. Live node editing right now. Ko-fi section. There we go. My notes have started to degrade, which I think is for the best, honestly. I think they got a little too out of hand. But yeah, I think we're going to talk about Evo. Went to Evo. And also, I've been wanting to talk about Wild Hearts for months. And I think at one point I was intending to do kind of a full, podcast review of it. I think it's been long enough at this point. I think it'd be a little awkward for me to talk about it. So I think I'll just say my general feelings and just kind of leave it at that, see how that goes. Also, I've been playing Warframe, or had been playing Warframe. I think I'll talk about that a little bit. I don't have any notes for that because I didn't finish it. I don't want to finish it. I think it's good. I think it's a fine video game. It's just not for me, I think. So anyways, I think that's where we're at. But yeah, with Evo stuff, the continuation of my little fighting game journey, I suppose. We're going to talk about side games a little bit. Some weird, I think, side games prejudice I have in a way that's similar to, Vanillaware, where, for some reason, when I see a Vanillaware game, I go, I don't like that. It's not just, I don't want that. It's, I don't like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and just kind of, sit there and pick my brain apart a little bit with that, because I was trying to figure out some stuff with it. And I think it's one of those things where I think I'm telling myself a lie a lot of times. I think I am telling myself something that I think is explaining what is wrong, but it's actually not true. So I think we'll talk a little bit about that kind of thing. But yeah, it's been a big gap. So, I don't remember really what happened I don't remember what the last episode was about at all. But yeah, I had an opportunity that came up where, let's talk about it now rather than waiting for the Ko-fi segment. I had an opportunity come up where the person who made that one game, shoot, I shouldn't be blanking on the name. I did a podcast about it. Misk, A Tiny Tale, they reached out to me because of my Chibi Robo video and were like, hey, you wanna talk about this video game I made? And it's like, sure, I will. And as the first time I got a review code in a very long time, I have gotten 4 review codes, I think. One I gave to somebody else because at the time I was at the Speed Gamers. The second one I got in a review disc. I got Catherine on PS3 from Atlas. And then I also received another review code a handful of years back, probably around 2020 actually. I really didn't end up doing anything with it. I feel kind of bad. But at the time especially, I wasn't in the right mind space to do something with it. Not in a sense of I was depressed, but in the sense of I didn't necessarily, this is always true. I don't think this channel is always this weird nightmarish, who knows where things are going kind of thing. But, I think at the time I was just not ready to commit to playing like some random game I didn't know from some person I didn't know. They saw my Wizard of Oz video and were like, "Hey, can you make a review like that for this game?" And I'm like, "That's not how this works." Which at the time I got a lot of, when I would say that to people, I got a lot of comments that would be like, "Hey, I get it. It's a passion thing, right?" But I do think that there is some value in just like taking a look at something somebody sent over. I think we are far from like any kind of like deep journalistic integrity over here at this point. I have like literal disclosures on my website with like old stuff that I used to do. So I used to take that way more seriously. Now, what do we do? I'm here to talk to you about some random garbage. And like, if I don't know, I mean, I think to some extent, I think you should trust me, but at the same time, I think I'm pretty upfront with you about like not always trusting me. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes like my brain is lying to me, I think, or my brain doesn't know what's actually true or not. So it like starts making up things, and like I think that's an explanation. Then I realize later it's not really. So I think like anything, the separation I've kind of made, I think this has been really helpful over the last like 5 or so years. I think with me, and both the gaming sense and also I think my personal life is like I think there's a difference between authority and trust. Like viewing somebody as somebody that has authority and somebody that you trust. Because I think you can trust what somebody is saying without viewing it as authoritative, right? I think those things are not inherently connected. So what do I have authority on? You decide. So yeah, but anyways, that's a long way to say somebody reached out to me. I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll check it out. And I was very pleasantly surprised by that game. I mean, I did the review on the channel and I did the podcast. I think if you want to go figure out what I said about it, those are the places to do so. But I think the big thing is like, I was expecting a Chibi Robo clone and it wasn't. It was a 3D platformer inspired by Chibi Robo in a lot of ways. So I think that was like what was cool about it. And then we also had the Slave Zero X thing, which was kind of a long time in the making, because I was offered to be talked to by the lead game designer years ago. The first year I went to EVO was because that's where I met him. And I turned him down. Again, similar thing. Hard for me to really commit to like somebody's random game at the time because I was really focused on what I was wanting to do. I think now I'm a little bit more open of just kind of like, I don't know, if you made something, I'm kind of curious what you made kind of thing, right? Especially if it's like someone that I, have some kind of rapport with. But Michael, the guy who did Misk, I didn't really know beforehand, but seems like a nice guy. As far as I've seen, I don't know. Not hanging out with him right now or something like that, right? So I don't know what's going on with him. But, everything I talked about, you guys pretty much saw. So that's my level of interaction beyond, planning Discord messages and things like that for the most part. But anyways, yeah, so those are the two things that happened. It just kind of worked out where I kind of need to do them back to back because Misk was coming out and he would, I don't know if he would like really want it. It seemed like he was like, hey, let's get this out on the day that the game comes out if possible. Not that I think he was like saying you have to, but I think he was just like, yeah, I'd prefer it if you did. So, and I think that was probably for the best, honestly. So. Yeah. So, but I think the really only thing you guys missed is like, I was looking at my notes because I did make notes for the last podcast and, it was weirdly a lot of notes on media literacy stuff. I think the thing is there's 3 articles I had read last time. One that was about like the Gundam creator kind of talking about his new upcoming series. And I think he's getting frustrated by people kind of losing the message with Gundam. And him, I think he literally says something that like he is like, I don't know if upset, but he said something about like, he was sad that like people focus so much on Gunpla without thinking about the message of Gundam, which is, war is bad essentially, right? There's a lot more to it than that, but that is kind of the baseline, right? And then there's like the Final Fantasy Tactics creator had made some comments about, Final Fantasy Tactics being something about how the like haves and haves not in society and how he thought that was a big deal in the 90s. And then now today he feels like it's even more the case. And I also watched like an interview. This is not gaming related with like Tim Heidecker, who did like Tom Goes to the Mayor and the Tim and Eric show and things like that. And he, I think it was called Doom Scroll, I think is what the podcast was. And he mentioned that like he had felt like there was like political messaging in those stories about him just kind of calling out the ridiculousness of like capitalism and things like that. So I think with media literacy though, like the more I think about it, because people will be like, oh, you need to learn to be media literate. I think it's just people like figure out, like they build an understanding of the world, and like once that's kind of more formed, like then they start to see where those things kind of differ in the content they're trying to consume. I mentioned the fact in here that was like when the Final Fantasy Tactics creator, when he made that story, he was 29, and now he's 59. And I feel like it's like your late 20s, early 30s is like when you, I could be wrong, feels like when people seem to get kind of like, I don't know if politically activated is the right word, but like have a better understanding of like what's going on in the world and like what, you know, the things they are making or things they're consuming like say about the world and things like that. So, but I think really I didn't really have much to say other than just like, I think a lot of the stuff I've always said before of just like, you know, how many layers of obscurity do you like put those messages behind? And I also, I think I said this in my Babylon's Fall video, I really can't fault anyone for just like coming home, just playing the game and having a good time. Just like, hey, I am sick. I've been working at the wheat farm. I don't know what's going on at the wheat farm, but I want to play Granblue Fantasy Versus. So let's work on wheat, grind. I don't know I don't know enough Granblue terms to actually make a joke though. Grind the what I call grind the train and stage. I don't know. Don't ask me. Who knows? Grind rank. So anyways, but yeah, I guess like speaking of Evo, I went to Evo again. I think this is my second year. I think I went 2 years ago, and then last year I skipped it because of some work stuff and other things that happened. So this year was my second year back at Evo. They moved venues, actually. It used to be in the, what is it called? Starts with an M. Some M place. And now they're in the Las Vegas Convention Center. I don't remember if this was true the first year I went to Evo, but man, like the sound difference between the rooms, like there's one side of the convention hall that has the tournament stages, and it's like, it's loud and like things are happening over there, right? Then you get to the other side of the convention hall with like the corporate booths and things like that. And it's interesting because it's crowded. But I don't know if it's just because of the space between the two, but like it just feels substantially more quiet. Like more quiet than Level Up Expo and things like that, right? So I thought that was like pretty interesting overall. I did go to the Artist Alley. I don't remember the Artist Alley the first year I went, but there's two people I met there. One, we've talked about before, Reeve Khan. Love me some Reeve Khan. Artist Black. And I think the other person's name is Persona Sama. They had their booth there, so I talked to them a little bit. And then also there's another group called Moga Factory there, or I don't know if it's a group, it's person. Moga Factory is interesting. It's this weird divide that I kind of like struggle with sometimes. It maybe like in some ways, if you like are familiar with how we talk about PCFX, this like kind of comes into play, where like Rolfie is this kind of cutesy character. Dress her up. There's like a paper doll set. I gotta get that printed out and stuff. There's paper doll set. Got it scanned. It's on archive.org and everything. It's been there for a while. I need to do something with it on the PCFX fan club. But you know, there's like this very cutesy aspect of Rolfie, but then there's also this like, she's also made for this like somewhat adult audience, you know, and so there's like some elements of like sexy kind of put in there, right? And so I feel like Moga Factory kind of takes like almost like a Rhythm Heaven-esque art style and then like makes it kind of like vaguely sexy at times and sometimes straight up not safe for work. And so it's that weird kind of thing of like cutesy art kind of blended with sexual content. And it's like such a hard line to walk with that. So I would be curious to know like, you know, where they go with that. Like, yeah, I don't really know if there's much to say. There's not, and it's not even that bad for the most part. It's just usually like a nip slip or something like that, right? There's like a character standing there and she's got like a bunny suit on, but she doesn't really have boobs. So like her nipples just kind of like appear on the side kind of thing, right? So yeah, anyways, but they had Love and Berry art, which I thought was kind of funny. I asked her, and I hope this wasn't like too like overly inquisitive in terms of the sense like, are you a Love and Berry fan? But I asked her like, oh, I saw you have Love and Berry art. That's really cool. What other games like Love and Berry do you like? Because obviously we're a big arcade card fan group here, right? I am. Are you? I don't know. I don't know if anybody here likes this stuff other than just hearing me talk about it. But a Tokadol. I play a little bit of Aikatsu, Dragon Quest Cross Swords. I played some American games as well. The Marvel Ultimate Champions game or whatever it's called in the arcade, or it's like the I've never played this one, which is oh god, what's it called? DC versus Injustice. That's what it's called. Injustice one. I haven't played that one, but I think it's similar to the Marvel one I played. It's like a fighting game with cards. And then Minecraft Dungeons, right? Side note, I went back and tried to play that Naruto game again. It's way too expensive. To get a full deck of cards, you need to spend $20 up front. That's crazy. Anyways, not full deck, a full hand. 4 cards, it's like $5 per play. Obviously, it depends on how much. It's like Dave and Buster's round 1. It depends on how much you spend. Best value, it's not $5. But for base value, it's $5, basically. So I sat down and tried to play it again. It's just like, God, this is way too expensive for what you're getting here. So I think I'm formally writing off that Naruto game. I don't think it's happening. I don't think we're ever playing Naruto card, whatever, man, game ever again. I wish I was. I wish I could give it a serious look, but it's just way too expensive for what it is. Like, even if like I was like in a position where I was like full-time job again, rather than just like this contract work where I'm kind of picking up and dropping work, it's just way too much. Anyways, so side note. So yes, I was talking to her about that, and she mentioned the Love and Berry alternative, kind of like so Love and Berry uses the same cab as Mushi King, which is the beetle fighting game. So she mentioned Mushi King. I probably should have inquired a bit more about that. Be like, oh, that's cool. Have you played it? And like, what is it like and all that stuff? Because I haven't played Mushi King. There's a DS one. Maybe someday we'll check it out. I got that DS capture card. Better do something with it. So yeah, so that was interesting. So this interesting thing, I did not expect to find Love and Berry at Evo. So I bought that piece of art, and now it's in my home somewhere. Somewhere in there. I don't really have like a place to hang it or anything like that. So although I have a lot of Otokadol stuff that I do want to hang more of. I do have some Otokadol stuff hanged. So I just don't know where it like fit. Maybe I shouldn't say there's no place to hang it. I don't know where it fit, like aesthetically. But I'm gonna support somebody who does some Love and Berry art. So anyway, so there's that. Just went around the corporate booths. I don't think I have anything to say about those booths at all. So there's 2 grand finals I went to. I think the first year I went, I don't think I did any grand finals. I think I just kind of walked up to one of those like open stages and just watched people play. I think it was Marvel versus Capcom 3. I did a similar thing this time where I watched somebody play Capcom versus SNK, but I was just there for a little bit, not very long, so I didn't know what was going on. I can't even tell like what characters are the Capcom characters at SNK. I was like, oh, is that an SNK character? Like, no, it's a Capcom one. They're from like Final Fight. I'm like, oh, okay. But I watched the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 Grand Finals, which if you don't know, if you're not into fighting games, Grand Finals, I think is basically like the top 10 players. So there's like a pool of people who play, and then they kind of compete, and then they get into this, I guess you'd call it tournament chart. You ever played Smash Brothers and play tournament mode? It's like the thing where they line up people's names, and it's like, this person's going to fight this person. And there's like different brackets you end up in. So you're like, if you win, you're in winner's bracket. And so that you just got to basically play your game until you get to the end. All good. If you lose, you get knocked down to loser's bracket, and you get a chance to come back. I think it's a pretty cool system because like sometimes you're just going to have a bad game, right? So it like basically gives you a chance to come back. And I think it also, from a viewer perspective, really plays in that comeback story. If somebody loses the first round and then they, come back through the loser's bracket, and then they have to not only win to get back in the winner's bracket, they also have to double win against the last person, basically. So they have to beat them twice rather than just once. So it's like a very interesting dynamic going on there. But so I was sitting down watching that. I was in a big stadium this time, kind of thing. I think what I learned a lot most, because I think the thing I talked about the first time I went to Evo, watching Marvel vs. Capcom 3, is like, it was really hard to know why people got excited. I'd see something happen, and I'd see people kind of start freaking out. And sometimes it'd be like not even a long combo, or not even do a lot of damage, but people would be like, ah, kind of thing, right? And so it's like, okay, something happened, clearly. So what happened, I don't really know. I think I got my answer this year, though, in the sense that I think one of the announcers mentioned this during the thing. But the fact that, like, the neutral, I think is what it's called, is really important. So this is where you, like, play footsies with the other person, where you're basically trying to bait out something, and once you get in there, once you hit them, assuming you set it up right, you can do a long combo, and that's when, in the case of Marvel vs. Capcom, maybe when the character straight up dies. But in most fighting games, it's like when you knock off like a third of their HP bar if you can do their combo properly. Sometimes, depending on the character, it can go longer than that. You can do more of their HP bar, that kind of stuff. But one thing that the announcer mentioned was that how important it was, how important the footsie was in Marvel vs. Capcom. Because even though it's a game where it is, in a lot of ways, the thing you see most is the execution of somebody doing this infinite combo that's going to murder a character the second he gets touched once. That in some ways is not the important part. It is important, don't get me wrong. The important part is just getting in there and hitting in the first place. And I think this is part of why a lot of fighting games end up with those kind of like auto combo systems, because they're like, hey, that's the hard part that takes a lot of time for people to kind of grind. I don't want to say needlessly. I think there's a lot of value in something like that, right? I think that's something that I've learned a lot, is that the idea that like things that can be automated through things like an auto combo, learning them without that is still a positive experience on you and can teach you a lot, right? Like, here's how to do it properly before you take shortcuts and save your time, right? A lot of this depends on how you value time, how much you want to focus on fighting games, all that stuff, right? I forget what I was going to... Oh, the importance of the combo, right? So yeah, I just think that was like an interesting kind of perspective on it, of just like, oh, even though the combos are the big flashy things you see, the important thing is, and in some ways the more exciting thing is what people are doing before that hit, basically. That's my interpretation of it. The thing I will always say through all of this is, I don't really know. I'm just kind of looking at this stuff, talking with people, trying to figure it out, kind of thing, right? But I think I got a lot more out of it. And I think there were definitely moments that I felt like I was like, oh, I get why this was an important moment, right? And the more and more I see certain characters do certain moves, more and more I start to recognize, hey, when this character does this, this is not good for the other player, kind of thing. And I think the nice thing about Marvel vs. Capcom is because so much of it is kind of like these infinite repetitious combos. Like, it is, you can just kind of see it happen. You can kind of see it in repeat over and over and over again. Where I think with other fighting games, it's a little harder to tell because there's just like a great like diversity of moves and things like that, I feel like. So, could be wrong about that again. And then we ended up staying for a second. I was there with two other people, the Slave Zero X guy again, and then the guy who I met between the two. Then we stayed for the second tournament, which was the Granblue Fantasy Versus. Reminder for those who might not know, this was the fighting game that I played before. So, in the context of when I've been talking about my personal experience with fighting games the last year or two, it's primarily been Granblue Fantasy Versus. And I have this real problem with Granblue Fantasy Versus, where there's just something not right about it that really bothers me. And it's really hard for me to put my finger on. And every time I take an extended break from Granblue Fantasy Versus, unless I have something I'm specifically trying to do, right? Unless I'm coming to this game with a very specific approach to it, I go right back to being like, God, something about this game just like does not sit well with me. And I can't figure out what that is. It's really challenging. And so I sat down, and that was the feeling I got again immediately, because I haven't played in a while. I was just like, gosh, dang it. This game just rubs me the wrong way. In a way that's like not just, oh, I don't really care for this game. It's like this game, I actively dislike seeing it sometimes. Like, I see the trailer for the new guy. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to see it. Like, I don't like this guy. I don't like his, like, anything about him. We'll get into that in a little bit. Actually, there's a very, I think that's not a real thing, but this is my reaction to it. Part of this also could be, that Marvel vs. Capcom thing was already like a few hours long, and then Granblue, I think, was another like 3 or 4 hours, and I was starting to fall asleep during it. It's also a much slower fighting game. And also it's a game that I know a lot more about. So, like, I'm not learning anything particularly new from it. I'm just kind of watching other people play Granblue Fantasy Versus. So I'm like, there's two feelings I'm feeling at this moment. One is I'd rather just be playing Granblue Fantasy Versus. If I'm gonna watch Granblue Fantasy Versus, I'd rather just be playing it. I would think about like when I think about like the moves I like in Granblue Fantasy Versus, the things I like doing in Granblue Fantasy Versus, it's a minority of that game's content. So seeing other people play Granblue Fantasy Versus, I feel like I'm not getting the things I want out of Granblue Fantasy Versus, which is I have a very particular character I like, and I like a very particular set of her moveset, and not much else. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. Also, the baseline mechanics. I will always say it is so helpful. Like the core mechanics of that game, I think are really good. I like the cooldown system with the abilities where you do a Hadouken and there's a cooldown timer. I like the kind of 3-hit combo. So instead of having like a full combo that the game does for you, you just get like a 3-hit combo that lets you think. I know I've said this like 8,000 times at this point. I love you. I'm trying to just reiterate just so to remind people, because this is in my brain all the time. I don't know when you're thinking about it. So yeah, but yeah, I just like sat down and I couldn't like quite put my finger on it. So I want to show you something I did after watching this tournament. I watched the whole thing. It's fine. I don't really have any thoughts or feelings on it. I'm going to try not to mess up my microphone while I do this, because with how this microphone's positioned right now, this mouse is kind of in a bad spot. I'll try to talk you through this on the what's it called? The audio version of the show. But I'm going to go to this Tiny Ben time is what this scene is called. The things internally on my computer and what they're named are nonsense mostly. Anyways, so let me go. Oh no, I lost it. Let me pull it back up real quick. All right. So on screen here, I have the character I like called Zoe. She kind of feels like a Link stand-in, if that makes sense, Sword and Shield kind of character. I don't think that's really true, but I think if you're in the context of you and the audio listener, think of a sword shield lady. She's got a little dragon, shoots little beams and things like that. She's got like long hair. She got this weird like tuft on her head. We'll get into that in a second. So I just like pulled up the character itself, because when I look at this game, like I don't like any of these characters. I don't like any of their designs. And so I was like, what do I not like about these character designs? And so Zoe, the character I like most in this game, what do I like about her? And so I highlighted all the sections of her character in 3 colors. One of them's missing on here. Red, which is, I don't like this. And yellow, which is, there are things I don't like about this, but there are things I like about this. And then green, I like this. Viewers of the YouTube version will see there is no green on Zoe. I apparently just don't like Zoe's design, is what I feel. And so I started going through like a bunch of these Granblue characters, trying to just figure out like, will you let me switch between these things? Okay, we're just gonna manually open these things. Oh, maybe it's gotta go, I got it backwards. I started just like switching through all these characters and just like trying to figure out, apparently I like the pants of Granblue a lot. Like, a lot of pants are green. I have notes on screen here that says pants, not scythe. And the art, the character's scythe overlapped with their pants. Don't care for the scythe, like the pants though. I like a lot of pants in this game, apparently. We'll get back to that guy in a second. But yeah, so most of these characters, mostly red. There's a couple of green and yellows here, but mostly red. Faces seem to be very red. Upper bodies in general seem to be very red. There is something about the design of these characters I don't particularly appreciate. And that's fine. I'm being honest with myself here. There's nothing wrong with that. So I brought in a couple other Granblue Fantasy characters from the not fighting game, Id. Id is a character I like. I like Granblue Fantasy Relinked Id. I think he's the best character in that game. I think they kind of did him dirty to some extent of just like shoving most of his story in the back half of that game. I think he should have been a lot more prevalent up front. But that's just my personal opinion. I apparently don't like anything about Id other than his chin. When it comes to his character design, he's kind of like this, he's got like a big sword, kind of like more like an Advent Children Cloud kind of look. He's got kind of like these like, this, I don't know what you'd call it. It's a bit more of a chunky sword, I feel like, than that's a lie. I feel like the original Buster sword is a lot more like angular, where the later sword from Advent Children is just like a lot more chunkier, but I could be misremembering, honestly. Anyways, I apparently don't like Id. And then Roland. There's a lot of things I like about Roland's character design, also from Granblue Fantasy Relink. I don't like Roland as a character. I actively dislike Roland. I just think maybe I shouldn't say I actively dislike. I'm disappointed by Roland. I feel like he does nothing in that story. He shows up, he's kind of the knowledgeable guy, and then I don't want to get into it because of spoilers, he more or less kind of disappears and then shows back up later on. And he feels like he's supposed to be more prevalent there, but he's just kind of not. Whatever the story arc is, doesn't matter. I like Roland's character design. I do not like Roland. So I think like sitting here and being like nitpicky as saying, I don't like the character design in Granblue is not a real thing. And I think part of this as well came down to, I started looking at some other characters that was like, hey, what are some other characters like? Here's Vaughn. I like Vaughn's alternate outfit. I think it's like Tactics Advanced too. I did not mark his face. I'd say I mark his face red in this version of him, which is the Dissidia Omnia version, that like PS4 Dissidia game that came out. Charla. I like Charla from Xenoblade, but I only really like her face, hair, and gloves. Everything else I don't seem to care about. Reeve-Con. Real Reeve fans. I apparently only like Reeve's upper body. Matt Winsard, everyone's favorite from Final Fantasy Ever Crisis. Like, lots of green there. But anyways, point being, I was looking at these characters like, okay, well, I like these characters and stuff. And then I also was looking at, I think I just accidentally opened GIMP. And then I was also looking at like Tails characters. And I would say I kind of don't like Tails characters in the same way I don't like Granblue characters. I think I don't like Xenoblade characters a lot of times in the same way I don't like them when it comes to character design. I think there's a lot about character design I'm very picky about that I actively ignore. But the difference is in those cases, I actively ignore them. In Granblue's cases, I'm like actively offended by them. So I don't think there's an issue with the character design. In a lot of ways, I like to compare it to, like, if you ever heard me talk about anime, and like sometimes when I talk about wanting to watch anime, one of the biggest challenges I have in wanting to watch anime is I'll read that little like tiny little one paragraph description that's like Uzuki, and keep in mind, it's been a long time since I've regularly done this, so I might be saying this in a very outdated fashion. We'd be like, Uzuki is a normal gamer high school student who's, got nothing going on with his life. Then he got hit by a bus, and now he's in a world where he's the best Gundam pilot because he's best at video games. And I'm like, that sounds miserable. Like, that is my first impression, is like, this sounds like a miserable thing to watch. I don't think that is true, though. I think it is me, like, assigning a lot of weird things onto this thing that has not shown me anything, or shown me nearly enough to tell me that there's something bad about it. But I think I'm, like, pulling certain things about it that, like, make me annoyed. And I don't really know what that is for Granblue. But I think if I were to say one thing that, like, might be... Well, I don't even know if that's true. One thing that might be it. Let me just say it this way. And I don't think this is true, to be honest with you, because I think there's a lot of things in my life that prove this to not be true. Is like, we could take the most basic explanation of Ben does not like the popular thing, right? And so it's like, well, you just kind of actively want to push yourself away from the popular thing and go and connect yourself to random stuff that doesn't matter, right? And I think there's some value in that. I think a lot of times when like people are like, hey, Ben, you want to go check out this Sega Saturn game, I think my brain makes the the calculation of, it's a Saturn game. Other people are going to look at that. It's good. That system's taken care of. And sometimes I'll joke about the Saturn, but I don't feel like negativity towards the Saturn. I'll just kind of joke about it in a way that I probably shouldn't still. So I do think there's like a little bit of that in me in terms of where I choose to put my focus, right? But it could come down to just, I like the mechanics and system of this video game, but the way the characters play in this game are not satisfying to me. Like, the base core mechanics are there. I like the concepts of everything happening, but I do not like the characters that are in the game itself in terms of how they play. Because I think what I'm really looking for is, what do I value in Granblue Fantasy Versus? And if you've ever heard me talk about Granblue Fantasy Versus, what am I talking about? 3-hit combo system and cooldowns. None of those are connected to a character. That's like a system in place, right? I don't think it is even connected to like how a character plays, right? It's like kind of connected to the limitations around a character. I think this is something that is I very much could turn around and say this is not true later, but like this is like I think where my brain's at right now with this. It's just like it's not really. I think it's just I value a lot of things about Granblue that have nothing to do with the parts of Granblue Fantasy Versus needed to probably really enjoy the game. Like the baseline systems are there and I appreciate that, but I don't particularly appreciate the characters. And this kind of got me into the question of like, what is different between how fighting games play? Because I don't know. I go and play most fighting games and somebody's doing a Shoryuken, which is like the uppercut dragon punch thing, anti-air kind of thing. Or I would say it's an anti-air move. I don't know if it's used for other things. Somebody does a Hadouken. They're going to throw out projectiles, right? Like, there's these baseline moves. A friend of mine explained it as like, think about it like shooters and like every game has a shotgun. It just depends on how that game handles its shotgun. And I can definitely agree with that. And I think I would probably say I am not experienced enough to say that I feel what is the difference between these Shoryukens usually, or at least not in a way that I can explain it, right? I don't think I've ever had anyone explain that to me about like what makes these characters feel different. I feel like usually when I think about how games play differently, it is almost always related to the type of fighting game it is: arena fighter, platform fighter, 3D fighter, 2D fighter, that kind of thing. Anime fighter comes up from time to time, which I think is usually just like a fighter that has like more horizontal movement, if that makes sense. Like you dash a lot more, it sounds like an anime fighter's kind of thing. So if an anime fighter if your game has dashing, I think people often start calling it an anime fighter. I don't know if that's always true, but that's my impression. But like even things like, what is the difference between Street Fighter and SNK games? Or what is the difference between Street Fighter, SNK, and Mortal Kombat? I think people have a hard time explaining those things. Mortal Kombat seems a little easier because Mortal Kombat seems to be a lot more, and I could be wrong about this, raw inputs versus like quarter circles. When I say Street Fighter like special moves in anything I've made before, I'm thinking about quarter circles. I'm rolling my thumb on the D-pad from the bottom to the right and pressing the button, which throws the fireball, right? Where I think Mortal Kombat's kind of more punch, punch, kick, which is a part of fighting, like all fighting games, but I think it's like more formally integrated into the game. It's like punch, punch, kick does something kind of thing. I say this not having played Mortal Kombat since like 10, something like that. So anyways, so that's my suspicion is that I want to get invested in a character in Granblue Fantasy Versus, and nobody, as far as I have seen, has been that character. And Zoe is half that character, but not the full character. And so I think not only do I not get invested from him from a gameplay perspective, I do not get invested from them from a story perspective either. And how true that is 100%, I'm not 100% sure, because I think Granblue Fantasy Relink had a very similar complaint about most of the characters, where like most of these characters seem absent from this story beyond just being there, which I've talked about Sword Art Online and how I think that handles it, and how I think Sword Art Online does like a really good job with it. But I'm also playing like White Knight Chronicles right now, which is a game that I think most characters kind of don't really add to the narrative. They're just kind of there. It's just kind of a chase the princess kind of game. And they have flavor to them, don't get me wrong. They're characters, but they're not like, there's not a lot of development happening with them kind of thing. And I feel like that's probably the place that like Granblue Fantasy Versus or Granblue Fantasy Relink, the RPG. I don't know if I've defined that, but if you don't know what Granblue Fantasy Relink is, it's the action RPG that came out a couple years ago. So different game, more of like a traditional story kind of game. We did a review on it, I'm pretty sure at the time too. But I think that game, again, rubbed me the wrong way in a way that like White Knight Chronicles doesn't. So I feel like there's maybe something still there, but I don't know what it is. But what I can say is that right now, either through choice or through circumstance, There is no character in Granblue Fantasy Versus that's appealing to me right now. Zoe has 3 or 4 moves that I like, and those are the moves I always lean on, and that kind of thing. So one thing I did, this is going on forever. I hope this is an interesting story. One thing I did was, if you go, Ben, fighting games, what is like one of the most memorable experiences you had playing fighting games? When you think of being happy playing fighting games, what do you think of? Kabuki Warriors, that's one. Kabuki Warriors is a different thing. I have not revisited Kabuki Warriors. I suspect a lot of Kabuki Warriors lacks combos, and that's why I like it, because it's more just kind of going around and poking each other a bunch. Also doing little poses on screen to get your like money thrown at you. But in real fighting game terms, like I shouldn't say real fighting. Kabuki Warriors is a real fighting game. It's just people don't like it. In terms of like actual fighting games that I enjoy, it's an indie game called Dynamite Bomb. Inaho's Town Dynamite Bomb, I think it's called in full. Which we've talked about on the show before. I also did an article forever ago about this, but I bought it off DL site forever ago. It's a Dojin fighting game by, I think, a studio called Light Green 8 or something like that. And there's also a Exa Arcadia enhanced re-release that came out, but unfortunately I don't know of any Exa Arcadia machines in Las Vegas. If you're aware of any, let me know. I'd love to go check one out. I've played it in Japan, and then also at PAX I played a little bit. But there's a character in that game called Annie Mosey, and Annie Mosey is a good example of where I think character design absolutely does not matter. Because for a long time, I used to say, I like cowgirls. Why? Because I like Annie Mosey. Not in the way that's like, horny, kind of like, yeah, I like cowgirls. But in the sense of like, generally, I like the design of the cowgirl kind of look, kind of thing. I think part of this also gets mixed into like, I like that like cowhide leather jacket thing. There's a character in Blue Breaker Burst as well, the fighting game specifically, not in the original Blue Breaker, called Kaimina, and she has a similar one, but it's a blue cowhide one. I like that jacket. It's a good jacket. But I was like, oh, I like how Annie Mosey as a character looks. And I went back and looked at her like maybe a year ago or so. I was just like, I don't like how Annie Mosey looks. She looks fine, but she doesn't look great. I don't like much about her. She's basically just in a bikini and has a cow like boots and cow jacket on. It's like, she's not a character that really appeals to me in that way. So I think what I'm thinking about with Annie Mosey is how she hits people. That's like the thing I think about with her is like, how does she smack people around? In that game, I will say, Dynamite Bomb, in some ways, almost feels like a weird, like Smash Brothers style game in some ways. And maybe a lot of this is informed by Smash Brothers, honestly, where it's just like, I like seeing somebody fly across the screen. I like being in the corner and being able to smack somebody and then just fly back. And I'm like, yeah, get out of here. But so I went down and sat down, and the thing I will say about it is that I always just kind of butt mashed my way through that game. So I was just like, okay, well, I will play this fighting game. And I wanted to have 2 things. One is I just wanted to understand the base level mechanics. There are buttons in the game I didn't know what they did. I knew the character would do something and go kind of thing, right? They make this noise, and then like this little energy thing goes in on them. One's blue, one's yellow. I don't know what those do. I don't know why they're important. And then the other thing was I wanted to complete the story mode without continuing once. 1 credit clear, I think is what it usually gets called, kind of thing. It's more, I think that's more of a shooting game term than a fighting game term. I don't know. Maybe it's a typical arcade term. I don't know. And so with Annie, I sat down and played through it, and I just like went through, it's all in Japanese. So I went through the README files and stuff and read like, what does this thing do? Why is it important? And I just had some basic things like, okay, like when I'm cornered, this is a parry. This thing is a parry, actually. It's just a little weird because it doesn't really look like a parry. It just kind of like, I guess it is kind of a parry. It's just slow, but I think the benefit of it is not so much that you get advantage as much as it feeds you energy. I could be wrong about that. That is my general impression of it. And the other thing was I think they're called a guard break, which basically is a move that if a character's guarding will break their guard so you can go in and hit them. So I learned that, and then I also learned some basic combos, and I was having a good time with it. I learned like I would say the bare basics of what the character is. And even within just that, I was just able to beat the story mode without continuing pretty easily. I think it was like my third or fourth try. Just, practicing some simple combos. The game doesn't really have any difficulty check on it, or level on it. Also, I have no idea what the AI qualities like. There's some characters in that game seem designed to be working in very specific ways as an AI, so it's like I can just anti-air this person nonstop because it's an AI and it's not changing its behavior. Where with a real person, if you're anti-airing them a bunch, they'll ideally stop, but it's always not as true. Myself included. So yeah, and I really enjoyed it. The only thing I'll say about Dynamite Bomb, it's kind of got a little weird combo system because like I'd sit down and be like, I wonder if this can connect into that kind of thing, right? And I think that's like usually when I see people talk about fighting games, it's like a lot of what they're thinking about when they get a new character is like what connects into what, basically, what makes the combo. Could be wrong about that. That is my general impression watching other people mess around with a new character. And I felt like I did get a little bit of that with Annie, but the combo system in that game is a little weird because there's a lot more, I guess you'd call it like branching path combos that are kind of pre-laid out. So it's not auto combos, but you'll do a special move and then you'll get something called, I think it shows up as like chance or critical chance or something like that. And then you just put in a direction on the D-pad or whatever you're using. I'm using the leverless, so, one of the buttons, which leverless is just a arcade stick without a joystick, basically. It's just like it has 4 buttons on it, so you can put in a direction. It's not laid out in a D-pad sense, though. It's laid out weird. The big thing is that you don't have to move a joystick around. It's supposedly better for your wrists. Also, I think it just is easier to play. I make, in my opinion, I make a lot more deliberate inputs when I'm pressing down a specific button for pressing down or pressing left versus if I'm on a D-pad or joystick. I don't know why that's different, but that's the thing I notice. And maybe it's just because it's just an input method I'm not used to. So I have to think a lot more about what I'm doing to make sure it comes out properly. So I forgot what I was saying, but you can combo, you can press a direction and then that will start like a special, basically, and it'll burn 1 meter. And you can basically kind of combo those burns of meters to back. It's pretty simple to do. It's just more about making sure when you get out of that, what's the next special that can lead you to the next one. Now, there's way more complicated things you can do with it, I'm sure. Like, I'm sure you can do like little hits in between to extend the combo. But for the sake of beating AI, it really just comes down to, here's my in move. I'm going to punch. And then I have a secondary move that is kind of like a safe hit confirm, if that makes sense. Like, basically what I'm doing with this move is I am trying to see if I actually hit them and get a moment to think. That's not really how it works. I'm sure there's an opening, but the AI doesn't seem to know how to deal with it. It's basically giving me space to think this second hit. I just do it no matter what, even if they block the first hit. And then I go into a special, and then that I go into another like hit that just kind of bounces them. And like, I think the special I was doing launches them in the air. So the hit like kind of keeps them in the air, and then I do another like, Hadouken style motion. And then I feel like I'm talking about this in a really weird way, but like, and then you do it as special. So it's basically just like this weird change of attacks, and it uses like 2 of your energy bar kind of thing. But it's like very laid out in a very simple way. And I think that's part of what makes Dynamite Bomb's combo system interesting. But I think it still has the flexibility where you are still making your own combos, right? It's not like an auto combo system per se. In my opinion, at least. But yeah. But it's just hard to know like why Annie and why I like her so much. But I think a lot of it comes down to she just has a lot of very impactful moves. Like every gunshot she does just has this little like rat-tat-tat-tat-tat with it. Depending on if you move, like do your movement backwards or forward when you like put in like, if you motion backwards, like it will shoot bullets out of the gun. They'll actually hit the other player. But if you motion forward when you do like the special motion, like when you're doing the Hadouken motion, if you motion forward towards the other player, it doesn't shoot those bullets. It just has like a bullets like flare in front of you, and that's the thing that hits the enemy, and that's really how you combo enemies, because if you use the bullet itself, it like launches them backwards, which is so good. But I just like learned a lot, and Annie Mosey's just a character I care about. Just, I think Dynamite Bomb isn't played by anybody. I mean, this is an old Dojin game that I think was niche at the time, but I think it got a cult following. There's some YouTube videos with combos on stuff online, and obviously they got an Exa Arcadia release, or whatever it's called. I think that makes a lot of sense. So that, some people would be into it. So, but yeah, I think that's really it for Evo. But yeah, I think a lot of that stuff with Granblue is just like not real. I think it is me, similar to like Nier Automata, where I am making a lot of reasons why I don't like this game and never saying why I actually don't like this game. Like, I don't know what it is. I think a lot of times, especially if you see me complaining about gameplay mechanics in a way of like how good they are, I think a lot of times that's me being not sure what I'm actually upset about. I think it's a very similar feeling I had with Final Fantasy 14, where it's just like there's some gameplay. I will nitpick that game, but I don't know what the problem is. I think I know what the problem is now. I don't know for sure. Maybe someday we'll figure it out. I'm not stressing about it. We're in a calm space right now with Final Fantasy 14. I'm kind of okay not knowing, but I do kind of still want to know. I'm just not pressured to know. I think that's a good space to be. Anyways, but yeah, and I had a similar feeling actually with Uma Musume as well, where like I just kind of don't like that game when I'm looking at it. And I suspect, I could be wrong with this, but like I think I have some weird feelings about like all female casts in certain situations. I think in the case where this cast being all female is like specifically there to create this like almost like very feminine supportive environment, if that makes sense. And so in my mind, it kind of reads as like, oh, like you could only be in that environment if you are a girl kind of thing, right? So you are only allowed in this space if you're a girl kind of thing, right? And there's like some things that people I think have said before were like, like with VTubers and stuff, like they don't want, some people do not want their favorite woman VTuber to interact with men because it suddenly introduces a lot of different things. And I think I am bothered by that. And I think I'm bothered by that for very similar reasons why I think there are certain games where I will identify actively as this thing where it's like, oh, it's not okay to be a guy in this game kind of thing. It's like you need to be a girl no matter what kind of thing. But I think that's a very lopsided opinion, I will say. Like, Final Fantasy 15 does not bother me. So, and I think I saw articles at the time of some people being like the dude journey doesn't have to be all dudes. But I think a lot of it comes from like me having struggles with like feminine spaces growing up and stuff like that. We talked about like Love and Berry a lot, I think, and like me wanting to play Love and Berry and being too embarrassed to play Love and Berry and stuff like that, right? So, which that's a whole other thing. That's a therapy discussion for me. So, anyways. Did you know it's Ko-fi time? Once again, thank you, Demodori, for supporting me again. Long time. Things have been quiet, I feel like, lately. So hopefully you're also like getting stuff out of the PCFX fan club with that stuff. So again, I appreciate you supporting me. Also, got an anonymous $20 donation from somebody. Ko-fi supporter. Thank you, random person who gave me $20. I appreciate it. We're almost at the me spending a day working on the next video for a work day. I will say I did try to. I have been working on the Final Fantasy 11 video. It's big. I don't remember the last time I updated you guys. It's big. And I think I can't edit it the way I used to edit smaller videos. Cause this weekend it's been like, it's been a little bit, I had a busy last month. I didn't talk about it, but between the two podcasts I had to do and a bunch of other stuff and, the Welcome to Pia podcast and work stuff, interviews, that kind of stuff. I was having a hard time finding time to work on it. Right. And, so I sat down again, I'm about think at this point, like 30 pages in. And so I was like, well, maybe I should start like reading this from the beginning again, just to get myself back in the mindset, and I'll just edit it as I go along. That cannot happen. That cannot happen. I spent hours going through that like first 10 pages, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm not anywhere near getting back to the point that I can actually work on this again. I just need to like reread the last 2 paragraphs the last time I worked on it, and then go from there. Because I think usually if I take a little bit of a break from what I work on, I'll reread the whole thing and then start from there. And then from there, I can figure out, is this where I actually want to be with this video or not? I don't think there's any rewriting this video at this point, unless there is some really substantial change that I very much believe in. But right now, I feel pretty good about it. My only issue, I think, is that the tone is a little different for the beginning versus the middle. And I think maybe towards the end, there might be some differences too. But that might just be a part of like how Final Fantasy XI develops as a game, at least for how I interact with it. So, still working on that. I love you. Kiss you. I hope everything's fine. I've been trying to focus more on the PCFX fan club generally as well. So if you're into the PCFX, that's there for you to check out. I do one thing. Let me look, gamers. I think I want to do something more casual with other people for a podcast. I feel like Hot Pot Gaming to some extent was maybe originally intended to be that, but then became an interview show, which is fine. I think I love Hot Pot Gaming. I get a lot out of it. But then part of me is just like, I kind of just want a space where random person that I probably know you to some extent. I know that like I have some like chemistry with you. I know that you're not going to. It's hard because like some people, you think that they're going to talk about some things the way you think they would, and then they talk about it a very different way. And I'm like, I don't actually know if I like the way you're presenting this kind of thing, right? Because I think the thing we kind of come back to here is like being respectful of others and the work they do and stuff like that, right? Annie Austin, actually, I watched a Mario Kart World video recently, and he mentioned something about like, it's okay to be curious about a video game or interested in something. It's okay to choose to be curious or interested. And that like something that you normally wouldn't care about, you choose to be interested to care about it. And that's like, can give you a lot of insight into something that you may not, if you did not choose specifically to be interested in it. Maybe good lessons for Granblue Ben. Anyways, so I think that's like part of it. But like sometimes I think when I talk to people, I can kind of like get a feel of like, I don't necessarily know if you're like lining up with like how I like to talk about games, but I also don't want to be in a situation where I only bring on like-minded people per se. But I don't want to be in a situation where I feel like someone's being like excessively disrespectful about something. So something I got to work out. And I got to work out with myself too. Not everyone's perfect, right? That's the thing. We talk all the time about me. I think me being a little hard on myself about being disrespectful in certain games and things like that. So, but that's more work, and I don't like. I'm trying very hard not to take on new projects unless I feel comfortable doing that. So, it'd be cool, but I don't know where I'd find that time right now. So, or maybe I should say, I don't know. There's only 24 hours in a day. I don't know what I would sacrifice to make that happen right now. There are many sacrifices I can make. It's about making the right ones, right? So, anyways. So yeah, I think that's it for now. Thank you again for everyone. If you've been donating on the Ko-fi, Demodori, random person, anyone else in between the Nintendo Video Now, I appreciate your support while I continue to figure out what I'm doing. I think that is the ongoing thing, but you know, hopefully this show is something you're enjoying. Hopefully you're enjoying Hot Pie Gaming. I appreciate you listening to those and commenting. Like getting comments is very nice. I was thinking about that with like Lucas, when we had Lucas Eggins on, and just having like a comment that's like, I thought about this from this is like, it's helpful. It's good to know that like somebody listened to it. It's not just like, I made this and nobody cared. So it's good to know. So, before we wrap up though, I know it's getting kind of long. I did want to talk about Wild Hearts at the very least here. I don't have a lot of notes for this. But If you don't know, I really like Monster Hunter style games typically. Despite not really liking Monster Hunter very much, I've only ever played Monster Hunter Tri, and I have almost never wanted to go back to the Monster Hunter series since. I've played a little bit of World, but I think that was more of a peer pressure thing of everybody was playing it, and people were like, "Are you going to play it? You should buy it and play it with us." And I bought it, and then I played it with people once, and then just kind of dropped it, and like, I'm good. I think I was interested in the 3DS games because I think they had some weird stuff going on there. The later ones, not the first one. I think Monster Hunter 4 was it on 3DS. I think that one I was just kind of like, eh. But I thought the Double Cross and stuff like that looked interesting. I don't think I'll ever get to those, but yeah, I like those kind of games, and I really like Tecmo Koei's games, which are the Tokiden franchise, which is Tokiden 1 and 2. We've talked about that before on the show as well. And this game, in a lot of ways, kind of feels like a Tokiden style game, but it's not Tokiden. It is set in kind of that feudal Japan setting. But kind of the big thing with this game is that your characters have something called katakuri. I don't know what that word means. I don't know if it's a real Japanese word. Probably, I don't know. Anyways, and katakuri basically is like this thread that you can use to build wooden structures in the world. So mid-combat, you can take out essentially your palm, hold your palm out, and you can build basically 4 different styles of structures. Well, actually 4 actively available to you. I think you eventually unlock like 8 of them, and so you can swap them in and out depending on what you want. But so some of these are like boxes, and you can jump on the boxes, and you can jump off them, and when you jump off them, you can do like a downward strike on the enemies. You can stack up those boxes a bunch and then jump from higher, and depending on your weapon, that might do more damage. And then you can get like torches that like set your weapon on fire, springboards that launch you around, and like these little hooks that you can like hook into the wall, and like little weird grapple things. Oh, and like glider that lets you kind of glide around as well. And you can attack from the glider as well. So all these things kind of like enhance your movement in different ways. And then also kind of augments your character play style. So the thing I've generally heard about Wild Hearts is that Wild Hearts is a simpler style Monster Hunter game. But I generally feel like, at least as somebody who's more of a casual fan of this kind of stuff, I'm not thinking too deeply about these Monster Hunter games typically. I think what I appreciate about it is that these katakuri kind of give you different springboards. I guess one is literally a springboard, but different springboards to do different things in the game, like do different attacks and things like that. And you have a limited amount of this thread, but they basically form instantly. So you can very quickly set it up in front of you and do something. So that's the basic ones. And then you also have, I don't know what they call it, but it's like advanced katakuri, which basically is where you take a series of basic ones, a certain thing, you stack them in a certain way, and it creates a specialized attack. So in the case of setting 6 wooden blocks 3x3 by each other, basically, or 3x2, vertically it's 3, 2 in each row, 2 columns, 3 in the column, 2 in each row. You make this thing and you put those 2 down, and it makes a wall. And so when the monsters in this game charge you, you can build this wall really fast, and you can basically use it to like knock them down and stun them, kind of thing, right? And so there's a bunch of this kind of stuff, and as you fight certain monsters, you unlock new ones. So there's ones that heal you, there's ones that like have harpoons that trap enemies. There's one that launches fireworks, which if it's a flying enemy will knock them down. And so it has a little bit of a delay on it. So you do have to be very quick about it, and you do need a little bit of time. It is not very fast, or not very slow though. It's just, but it is not immediate. And so you have to like quickly turn around, recognize something's happening, and say, this is what I'm doing, put in the button combo, bam, there's the thing you need. And then, so there's just a lot of these interesting things with those, but those are more separate from your character. Like, you don't interact with them in the same way you interact with the basic katakuri, where you're like jumping off of them, launching off of them, touching them to launch, catch a weapon on fire. These are things you're building that are basically specialized moves in the game that everyone can use. But because you only can equip certain number of basic karakuri, you don't have access to all of them at all the time. So when you're playing with a group of, the game only supports up to 3 players, I think. I don't remember if the Switch version that's coming out changed that or came out. I don't remember. Changes that to 4. But the original one at least only supported 3 players at a time. So each player, could bring a different set of basic karakuri to kind of diversify your loadout kind of thing, right? And so it's a pretty cool little system that I think really changes how you interact with your weapons in different ways. So even though the thing I've heard again was that people saying that the weapons are a little simple, I don't know how simple they are in my opinion. Looking at them, I was like, I think these are fine. But, I'm not super in-depth on this stuff. I thought it was like a really cool way to augment your playstyle. The weapons themselves, I think, are just kind of your traditional Monster Hunter stuff mostly. Big giant sword that's slow and lumbering. They have like these kind of like smaller daggers type weapons, although it kind of like hooks on, and so you can kind of like fly around the enemy and slide in and out. So it kind of like you're kind of like hovering above them almost, if that makes sense, while you're like flying around them like a little bee, slice them up or something. I don't know. I don't know if bees do that. So there's that kind of thing. There's guns. There's other stuff. I used the umbrella, and the umbrella was pretty neat because there's no defensive options in the game for most classes, so it's all just kind of dodging. And the game has a lot of good movement. I will say there's a lot of like sliding and stuff that you can do. But there's a lot of things you can do with the karakuri to kind of dodge attacks as well. So there's a lot of movement options, but not many like straight up defensive options where you're like blocking something. The umbrella I use has a parry, and so there's this meter. And so with the umbrella, you can either parry to build meter, or you can like rapidly hit the enemy. And as long as you are hitting the enemy or parrying regularly, this meter doesn't go down. So you want to basically keep like a high meter. But what this means is that like backing off is really bad with the weapon I have, because like if I back off when a monster's doing something crazy, there's a good chance I'm going to lose my meter, and all my weapon's damage comes out of being at a high meter level. It's like there's no specific special move my weapon does. It uses the meter as almost like an engine revving up, and when it's at max power, that's when it does the most damage, basically. The other weapons in the game, I believe, have more of you build your meter and you do a special thing. Mine is like, you build your meter and then you just keep on going crazy and you just do lots of damage, basically. But it requires you to constantly be on the boss. And I think that's why they have a parry. And I think they also have like kind of I don't know if it's a better dodge, but like a quick dodge in a way that other characters don't have. Because I think the intention is that you're just going to stay on the boss at all times, no matter what, kind of thing. So I found a lot of like depth there when it came to the gameplay for me personally. And so, yeah, I think the gameplay itself is really cool. And I think if you're looking for like a variation on Monster Hunter, I think it's really cool in that way. There's also non-combat karakuri, so you can use things to kind of like build zip lines and stuff. And similar like Monster Hunter fashion, there's like these different levels, but they're like persistent levels, and you can build structures in them, and those structures will stay there. So you can like build a harpoon, so the next time you come to that area, that harpoon will still be there. It will still be launched, and you can like basically use it as like a zip line kind of thing, right? Or you can build little places where, if you don't want to go gather materials, you can set up these little huts, or these little like robots will go gather materials for you and stuff. So it's like these little bases you can build almost like a Minecraft kind of way, as somebody who has not played Minecraft, but I think it's kind of in that vein kind of thing. So it's pretty cool in that regard, and I think it lets you do a lot of stupid stuff too. There's a lot of stuff you can build for no good reason, and I love doing that stuff. It is a little limiting because like you do have to upgrade your like armband for each region. It's like it's not like your armband does not get a total number of things it can build. It's like each region has a specific number of things you can build based off how you upgrade the region. It's kind of weird. So there is a little bit of frustrations. Like if like I just want to build a tent here, but all my stuff's already being used. So you got to go open your map and pick and choose what you want to get rid of so you can build a tent somewhere. I kind of wish there's a little bit more freedom in that regard, but I imagine part of it's like system limitations. We can only load so much in this map kind of thing. But I think it's pretty expansive for the most part. Like, especially when you get to the final upgrade in town, you can do a lot there. I've built some nightmarish structures in town and things like that. And there, somebody just likes to goof around sometimes. that ends up happening. Like when everyone else is like upgrading their weapons, and I'm like, I'm just gonna keep using the weapons I have because they're working. I'm gonna go make this giant nightmarish box structure that gets me all the way out into the ocean to the invisible wall and then kills me. Because that's just what I'm gonna do. So yeah, but it's for the most part mostly just kind of Monster Hunter style game. I think the one thing is if you're a Tokiden fan, one thing that I think is really powerful about Tokiden is its storytelling. I don't think it's like particularly great at its storytelling, but it has a very consistent theme, I think, of just like, I don't know if it's like regret, but it's all built around like this idea of like death and regret, I think. And I think it's like what I like about Tokiden a lot is that story, and like all the characters feel bound to that story, and each of those characters, even though they don't have like a lot of story, you get the dialogue that kind of like builds those bridges and things like that, right? And I kind of appreciate that. I don't really feel like that was the case with Wild Hearts. I will say it does have the ability for you to play the story online, where Tokiden does not have that. So Tokiden, I'm sitting there by myself listening to the story and enjoying it. Wild Hearts, I'm in a chat room with the people while the story's going on. Everybody's quiet, I will say. So we're all like sitting and watching. But it just feels like a story where like, I don't really know what's going, like, I don't really know what is important in this story. And I also feel like not a lot happens, if that makes sense. Like, I think this is probably somewhat true for Tokiden as well, but like very little feels like it happens on screen. It feels like a lot of things in that game are told to you that they happen, not that you see it. But I don't know how true that is or isn't, but that's the feeling I got from it. So it's a little bland in that regard, but, especially if you see it cheap. I don't know like how it gets priced these days and you're like a general Monster Hunter stuff or Monster Hunter fan. I think it's a really cool variation on the formula. I think it added something that I was looking for. I'm always kind of looking for that little thing that makes something different, which I think is kind of why returning to a franchise like Monster Hunter is a little tough. Even returning to Tokiden 1, as much as I enjoyed it, it was a little just like more of this again, but thankfully I really enjoyed that. So, where Monster Hunter, I think I'm not as like connected to that world, connected to that story. I think so, if you're connected to like the world and story, things are a little bit more evergreen than if you're like connected to something for a more mechanical reason. I could be wrong about that. So yeah, so that's how Wild Hearts went. I thought it was pretty cool. I liked it a lot. Let's just get out of the way because, this is a monthly show and this is going on for a while, but I also haven't been here for like 2 months. So Warframe. We played Warframe. I don't remember the last time we were playing before we played Warframe. It's been on our docket in our multiplayer group for a long time. And I look at this game like, I don't like how this game looks. It's like this weird, gross techno future thing with like humanoid robots, but they're like made of parts and stuff in a way that I don't like, which is fine. It's okay visually. It's not my thing. I'm not like offended by it. I just think it's a little just like, okay, I don't care about any of this. And I think, I think a face goes a long way for me. And they eventually kind of introduce faces later, but this is like a live service looter shooter kind of thing, where you go and I don't know if you'd call it a looter shooter. It's weird. It feels like a shooter, but it's not. I never really shot in the game. It's a game where you go and you do these dungeon runs, and there's just like drops everywhere. There's just stuff everywhere. Currencies, materials, resources everywhere. It's nonstop. And there's just a bunch of enemies, and it's all kind of randomly generated. So you go through these dungeons and you just kind of like kill these enemies, complete like an objective or two, and then extract. And then like, at a live service game, it's free to play. So there's things like, oh, you got the blueprint for a new weapon. So if you want to do this, you need to have these materials. Once you have these materials, you have to wait 24 hours to make it, or pay some money, or you can just buy the weapon outright with real money, or I think there are blueprints you can buy as well with the real money. I don't know for sure on that one, but that kind of thing, right? Which none of it really mattered, I think, as much as it's there. In the time I played it, we played it for probably like 70 hours. I'd have to go back and look at my time. None of that really mattered. I had to pay a single penny for the game, and it really didn't feel like a big deal. The game was just so easy. That was the big thing, was just like, so it's structured as a shooter, but it also has like a pretty in-depth melee mechanic component. This melee mechanic component is horrendously overpowered early on. Everything dies in like one hit. And another really key and cool thing about Warframe is you move really fast. So I basically just spent the whole game dashing and meleeing nonstop. and you move really fast. So I'm flying through these rooms, just like spinning basically and murdering everything between me and the other side of this room, and then just leaving. And I'm playing with 3 other guys, and they're like, trying to take their time and stuff. And I'm just like, whoosh, just spinning through this dungeon because nothing's challenging. It's all copy paste content, and all the drops don't matter. So I'm just like, okay. And I feel bad because I feel like I came to that conclusion very early on and they did not. So it took them a while to adapt to me just spinning through everything. And eventually I think they realized there is just nothing in this game. So I guess we're just going to spin through too. And sure enough, just spin through. So we're all just meleeing through everything. And because it's a live service game that's been going on for 10 years, it's very busted in structure. This is not Warframe's fault. It's just when you layer 10 plus years of content on top of each other, you want to make something different and cool, right? So you have content that's here's this dungeon style content. Here's this weird overworld style content. Here's this weird Tony Hawk Pro Skater thing. Here's this weird other thing. And it's if you're playing this game actively, these are probably pretty cool little things that are getting put in front of you. It's oh, did you see they added this new planet mission this week? You do Tony Hawk Pro Skater moves, right? But in the context of playing it for the first time and just trying to get a handle of the game, it's it's just weirdly out of place when you just suddenly spend 2 to 3 hours doing Tony Hawk Pro Skater stuff, and the reward are cosmetics, and you're all right. So it is really tough, I think, to really make that work when somebody's coming back later. And it feels very much designed. I mean, Babylon's Fall had a similar issue. I think a lot of live service games had this issue. And I was talking to one of the guys at Evo who play Warframe, and they're just yeah, the whole point is just to kind of get to the part where the content's relevant, and that's when it gets hard. That's when meleeing everything stops working. So, but you can do upgrades and mods on your suit. There's a lot of mods you can do across your suit. You have a primary gun, a secondary gun. You can upgrade and mod those. I barely ever did because they're never really worth it. And then you upgrade and mod your main weapon. There's a lot of good reasons not to use the same weapon the whole time. Basically, every weapon can get to rank 30, but through that, it basically upgrades your character slowly. So when you get your weapon to 30, you want to switch to a different weapon and get that one to rank 30. And so the point of that is to kind of keep building a mastery, and that gives you access to new weapons, stronger weapons, and things like that. So it's for me, it felt like the primary motivation for playing through this. And there's this planetary system that you're following quests through, but it's very confusing because, again, content laid on top of content, laid on top of content. You're doing a story, then suddenly you're interrupted by this completely different story that's happening. Again, this is a problem that Final Fantasy XI has struggled with for years as well. So I think the thing that really kind of broke it for our group, because most of the people I think in the group were enjoying it, there's a couple that one that I think really started to sour on it at some point. The other 2 I think were enjoying it, but also recognized that I was kind of done and the other person wasn't enjoying it. But there is a point in that game where it feels like they really figure out, from what I can tell, what they want the story to be. We want you to care about your character in this way. And so your character suddenly becomes a part of this story in a way that you were just a faceless protagonist before. You were nobody talked about you. You were called the Tenno, which is their in-world robot people thing. And you were just referred to as that. Suddenly you become a person and you are a part of the story. And so the style of storytelling changes a lot. And it sounds like with that storytelling change, the other thing that changed is that they are no more multiplayer content for this stuff. So a lot of the story progression becomes single player only. And in a multiplayer group, that's kind of a problem. So there's definitely multiplayer stuff you can do together, but you have to care about the other stuff in the game for that. I'm looking at this map and I just want to get to the end of this map. That's all I'm looking to do at this point. getting into this map. I'm upgrading my weapons to level 30, cashing them out so I can, upgrade my mastery so I can get the next best weapon kind of thing, right? I just want to hit harder next time. And I will say, by the time that we had kind of finished, the melee attack strat was not as potent. I would have to kind of stop and spin rather than just spin directly through a room. So I think that it was probably getting there, but I think by hour 10, I was like, oh, I know what this game is at this point, which is none of this matters right now, because we are starting this video game that, has an intense amount of content, and none of this is relevant. That's just the live service problem, I feel like. I would love to know if you feel like there's other games that have done that differently. I would love to hear what you think about it. But yeah, that's kind of my general feeling. I think it's like a fine game. I think the movement's really cool, but like it was the nicety on top of a game I did not care about. So I don't hate it. I just, because I was kind of like, whatever. There's a lot of very little design decisions that I was annoyed by, but I think in the same way that I was like kind of just annoyed by it because like the Tony Hawk thing is just like, I just kind of want to get through this game at this point, and that's like more of a mindset thing. And so going off on a Tony Hawk side quest for cosmetics probably makes me go, why are we doing this? Kind of thing, which I think is probably not necessarily how it was intended to be played. Is the idea like it's a part of, well, I think it was a part of the mainline story at the time. I think they changed it, like literally halfway through us playing, they changed how story progression worked again. And it was like, okay, now how we do story stuff is different. So we had to kind of refigure that out for a little bit. So anyways, that's my Warframe experience. Play Wild Hearts. Warframe, I don't know so much about that one. That's my opinion. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you guys enjoyed the break. I hope you enjoyed the Hot Pod Gaming episodes. I will say, if you're still listening, one thing that would be helpful to know, it was the first time I interviewed developers in a really long time. If you have any feedback of any of that stuff, it'd be good to know, because there are things I definitely notice on my own. I'm just like, I don't know how this question needs to be asked. But if there is anything that you're like, I wish I knew more about this, or I wish you went further down this, or I wish you asked questions more along this line, that would be good to know. Because I think I'm struggling a little bit with just like knowing like what is a developer interview and what am I trying to do with those things. Because, obviously, even though Myst had just come out, I'm not necessarily there to be a part of the, PR cycle per se. In the case of Slave Zero X, it was kind of like, how did this game come together? And it is like a history of the development of the game. But I think more than anything for me, it's like this game that I thought was very intentional had a lot of issues in coming together at the very end. And a lot of the decisions made were because there wasn't enough time. So anyways, go check those things out. I'll let you know if anything changed about that other podcast idea that I had, just like basically bringing somebody on, just being like, hey dude, what's up? I think it'd be a good thing to do. Maybe that'd be something I'd do on this show. I don't know. It's a little hard because it's a monthly show. So I feel like I built up a lot to talk about already. I don't have the timer up, but I imagine we're probably over like an hour and 20 minutes now. But I could be wrong. Anyways, that's going to be it though. Thanks for coming. Hope you guys have a great week. Month. Bye.